I wrote The Crying Pennant in 1996. It started off as a short story written for a local writers' group. About halfway through, I chopped my fingertips off on my right hand at the malt and bacon factory. This is referred to in the book midway into chapter 5, when Alf the elf pretends to lose his hand in a hole in the wall. It was published as an online book by Hayford Leisure in 1997. This was pre-Kindle days, and you would either print it out or read it on your computer monitor. I did also write the first chapter of the second book, The Sitting Duck, but did not continue with it until 2011. My theological book was published by Diggory Press until the company went under because of the global financial crisis of 2008. When speaking to a guy from a computer recycling place and telling him about my fantasy comedy book, he suggested that I self-publish my books on the Kindle. So I did. I also began to write 500 words a day, and within 3 months had completed The Sitting Duck. I went on to write another 5 in the Arth series and turned some of my daily flash fiction into books as well. I recorded the first chapter of The Crying Pennant on my laptop about 10 years ago. I was not happy with the sound. Recently I invested in a phantom power source and a good microphone, and have now been able to produce a better version to release as an audiobook. And now, for my YouTube subscribers, here is chapter 1 as seen via Audacity software. I will put the next 6 chapters on every Sunday until I release the full audiobook. Enjoy. The computer hummed its high-pitched hum. It was bright and early, and the sun flickered bright, then dim through the kitchen door window. The author had just put some toast into the toaster and was thinking of what he could type. He sat down and looked at the screen. The familiar blue stripes of the Windows package glowed, and the cursor blinked at him. Blank. What could he write? He began. The plaited seesaw rocked to and fro in the wind. A seagull screed, and the door to a chalet banged like a drum on its hinge. The small boy stepped inside and closed the door. After covering himself with a blanket, he began to read. Looking at the screen, the author wondered what to write next. He felt his chin, then went to margarine his toast. Still nothing. Just a little boy reading a book. He munched and drank and waited. Suddenly 2 characters appeared and began to argue. A blond bearded man-at-arms dressed in patchy leather armour, a lion's head blazoned on his shield, and a battle chieftain in studded leather armour, with a surcoat of red, also with a lion embroidered upon it.
"Biggs, why have you come to this gloomy and dismal place? It is rumoured to be the haunt of dark and dire monsters," Arthur quipped.
"Stop quipping, Arthur. You're getting on my nerves," muttered Biggs.
"Well, if you stopped muttering, maybe I wouldn't have to quip,"
quipped Arthur again as he sidled up to Biggs.
"That's it. I can't stand it when you sidle. Look at that. You've sidled right up to my side, you side-sidler, you."
Biggs retorted to Arthur's quipping and sidling.
"You've got about as much courage in this place as a hypochondriac hamster, you filibustering philanthropist,"
Arthur again quipped forcefully.
"Stop getting verbose with me, or I'll take your quip off you."
Biggs parried, thrusted, and came to rest upon a metaphor.
"Just what kind of English do you think that is?"
said Arthur, talking this time to the author. I did not wish to answer my creation, so I continued typing, hoping that the latter could be as good as the former.
"He's just pig ignorant,"
suggested Biggs, I resenting it, as, even now, I typed it.
"That fellow with the word processor has put us into this dark and dismal place, and I don't like it,"
blubbed Biggs with a big kind of blubbing noise. I decided to speak up. "Look, you two, I'm in charge of this book, so do what I type." I thought that would tell them.
"Of course you never can read, Mr. Author, sir, so we know what you think on paper," whined Arthur. "Well, he's left a few lines free, so maybe he's not going to interject in our lives any more," Biggs said. Then Arthur said, "OK then, Biggs, let's explore this dark and dismal place. Have you got the lantern?" "Of course I've got the lantern." Biggs struck the flint against the stone. "I wouldn't strike the flint against the stone. My character just wouldn't do such a silly thing," said Biggs in a self-righteous tone. "Don't get all righteousness now, Biggs. Just light the lamp in a common-sense sort of way."
So in a common-sense sort of way, Biggs lit the lamp. It's dark. I know it's dark. Even with the light on it's dark. A pause. I'm getting muddled up with who's speaking.
"Who's speaking?" quibbled Biggs. "Can't you spell correctly, Author?" C-O-R-R-E-C-T-L-Y, I typed. That's it, Mr. Author, sir. If you don't stop trying to be funny, I'm going to make a complaint to the Funny Characters Union.
Sorry, I said.
Oh, look, there's a dark mildew-coated metal studded green lacquered warped and flea-bitten oak door. It wasn't there just now. I bet the author just put it there, bibbled Quiggs. Oi, get the name right. B-I-G-G-S, not Quiggs, corrected Biggs. What, do you mean that dark mildew-coated metal-studded green lacquered warped and flea-bitten oak door to the left? Or the dark mildew-coated metal-studded green lacquered warped and flea-bitten door to the right? Questioned Arthur as he looked from side to side. It's the author again, Arthur. He's messing around again. That door wasn't there just now. What, do you mean the dark mildew-coated metal... Shut up, Arthur. Just go through the door on the right, the one we saw first. That's a fine way to talk to your lord and master, I must say. The dark mildew-coated metal-studded green lacquered warped and flea-bitten oak door swung open with a high-pitched kind of wobbling falsetto creaky sound. That was a high-pitched kind of wobbling... Biggs hit Arthur with the map he was carrying to shut him up. I didn't know I was carrying a map, especially one I could hit you with. Don't you hit me with it again, just read it, quivered Arthur. If you quiver again, that might give us some arrows. So Arthur quivered, and they had some arrows. Spreading the lamp on the floor, they looked at the map. It showed a dungeon underneath an old castle. That's pretty scary. Look, we're in a dungeon under an old castle. When I signed up to be a funny character, I didn't expect a Spanish Inquisition. They both looked around, half hoping that a mad cardinal would leap out and threaten them, but all remained quiet. Well then, this is where we are, outside the room called the, heard Biggs. The author could not think of what to call the room. Well, anyway, we're outside this room marked with a skull and crossbones, so we can assume that it's dangerous, said Biggs as he pointed at the map. The map said with disgust, Didn't your mother tell you it's for to point? This stunned Biggs and Arthur because they had not expected to meet a talking map. A talking map? My, what will they think of next? I wonder how many silicon chips it's got in it, mused Arthur, because he liked to think of himself as a kind of computer expert. A kind of computer expert, chided Arthur. Next you'll be saying that I'm kind of not here. And for a while he vanished because the author was sick of his prattling. I'm sorry, but that's not fair, said Biggs boldly in a kind of loud telling off voice. He's my partner, and I'm a little scared of this place still. So I relented, and Arthur again popped back into the scene. Pop! That was a little pop by such a little maid, Arthur. Where did you go for that little while? I do not know. I just kind of stopped existing, bereft of life I rested in pieces. My existence, it seems, is only on paper. It makes you feel quite humble and enamoured of the author who breathes life into our little lives, doesn't it? Thought Arthur. Suddenly a bright, shining sword fell from the roof and stuck in the floor. Did you see that? It's that author fellow. Because you sucked up to him, he's given you a sword. That'll be useful. See if you can get a both of these arrows out of him, suggested Biggs. Oh, author of Arthur, lend me your lyres, that I may speak of your balmy goodness to all that kind. A bow also fell from the ceiling. This is good, Arthur. Keep it up, said Biggs gleefully. Wisest of the wise, meekest of the meek, goodest of the good, and honest of the on. 2 suits of full plate-mail armour, rations for a year, a fully armoured warhorse, a bucket and spade, and an A to Z guide to London fell from the ceiling. Okay, Arthur, I think that's enough for now. Don't praise him too much, or we'll be squashed by the abundance of his gifts. What are we going to do with the warhorse down here? Just let it stay here for now. You never know. We might need its pulling power, said Arthur, as he stroked the warhorse's mane. Biggs started to dress in the plate armour and helped Arthur into his. I'm going to walk through this door. Are you coming with me? Asked Biggs, as he walked through the door and straight down a well shaft. That's why it said danger on the map, and that's why we need a strong horse. The realisation spreading over Arthur's face. Just get me out of this well. Well? Yes, well. Well, are you doing well? Stop bunning and send me a rope! Arthur looked on the horse and found a rope. He tied it to the horse's neck and sent it down. Splosh! Thanks, Arthur. Remind me to get you some chocolates if we ever get out of here alive. Biggs tied the horse to his waist and tugged on the rope. Arthur pulled Biggs and the fully armoured warhorse up. Hold on a minute, Arthur. There's a big, gaping, dark and haunting hole in the side of this well wall, said an astonished Biggs. Well then, do you want to have a look at the well wall? Of course I do, but pull us both up first.
Arthur pulled them both up, untied them, put the rope around Biggs's waist, and pushed Biggs into the well again.
Splosh! You didn't tie the rope to the horse's neck. Hang on, and I'll set the rope up on an arrow. Twang! Thud.
The arrow stuck in the war horse's saddle. Arthur tied the rope around the horse's saddle.
All right, Biggs, I'm leading the horse up the passage a bit.
Biggs again slopped and dripped out of the water and got within swinging distance of the gaping hole.
Okay, I'm there. Let me swing it.
He swung into the hole and grabbed hold of the Sid.
I'm in. By the way, who's Sid?
Oh, he's a typing error. I was supposed to spell side, but you can keep him if you like, I said, hoping that the flow of inspiration would continue. So Sid, who now appeared as a dwarf, helped Biggs to get into the gaping hole.
So then, Sid, what are you doing down here?
Questioned Biggs in a sort of quizzical way.
I don't know, I just appeared, said Sid the dwarf in a kind of bemused, bumbling brogue. Oh, so you're Scottish dwarf then, Sid? I must be if I speak a brogue, but I can't help feeling that the author only wrote that because he wanted something to go with bemused and bumbling, Sid said. Oi, Biggs, who are you talking to? Grumped Arthur angrily.
Sid the dwarf, I think he's going to help us from now on.
I will, by my I will, eyed Sid.
I'll tie this rope to this brazier so that I can come down and see him. Secure your end, please, ordered Arthur, as he tied the rope to the brazier. He then shuffled down the rope and alighted upon the edge of the big, gaping, dark and haunting hole.
You're later than a dollar cup fashion me, I see, Arthur,
complimented Sid the dwarf.
Don't be funny, Sid the dwarf!
Arthur seemed to shout, but the author just left the caps lock on.
So shall we see what's at the end of this big, gaping, dark and haunting hole?
Suggested Biggs, who was still holding the lamp which sent rays of light piercing ahead of them into the forbidding darkness.
He wouldn't like to be here without a lamp in that forbidding darkness, said Sid the dwarf then. You go first, Biggs.
Biggs picked his way over the loose rubble that lay across his path.
You have to pick your way, Biggs. Just put the pick down and walk tentatively, said Sid the dwarf. I'll pick the nits out of your hair with it in a minute, retorted Biggs, as he tentatively picked his way through the loose rubble. A low, grumbling, throaty roar proceeded down the passage, and they moved aside out of its way.
I wonder what that belongs to,
quivered Biggs, as another quiver of arrows fell from the ceiling.
That's useful, said Sid the dwarf. Do you think you could get me a battle axe since you're both armed?
You'll have to compliment the author, Sid,
quipped Arthur, who was still very fond of his quip.
Mr. Arthur, sir, can I have some salt and pepper?
Said Sid the dwarf. So condiments fell from the ceiling, and Sid's mother-in-law, fully armed, bearded, and ready to tell Sid off.
Now then, Sidney, where do you think you've been this past 10 minutes? You should be at home with my daughter,
blasted Sid's mother-in-law, scaring all three of the adventurous heroes.
I meant a metal battle axe, not my mother-in-law, said Sid the dwarf.
I told you to compliment him, Sid, not condiment him, said Arthur.
Excuse me, mother-in-law, before you go, can you lend me your special battle axe, the one you keep father-in-law in line with? Said Sid the dwarf.
Sid's mother-in-law gave him the battle axe, and just as quickly I made her vanish in a puff of smoke, deciding not to torment them any further with her presence.
I bet your mother-in-law's good to fight, enthused Biggs.
Yes, we could have sent her ahead to encounter the wild beastie that seems to be ahead of us, said Sid, killing 2 birds with 1 stone.
Biggs again picked his way down to the end of the passage, which ended in another gaping hole, looking into a small cave. They all peered in and saw a hulking, breathing, dark and dire monster.
Have you got your bestiary, old chap?
Arthur asked Biggs.
Yes, of course,
answered Biggs, and proceeded to look at his rucksack. He drew out a tome and flicked through its pages.
Dragon, tiger, demon, aye, with his dark and dire monster of the hulking, breathing type. Usually live in dire and dismal caves beneath dangerous castles. They can be quite dangerous themselves, spitting a kind of acid on their victims, read Biggs, as the dark and dire monster spat a kind of acid at Sid.
Yo!
shouted Sid.
I'm shrinking!
Arthur drew his sword, but decided that his pencil did not have a sharp enough point, so he unsheathed his sword and began to strike at the dark and dire monster. It spat and roared, and after a few more hits fell to the ground. Sid ran quickly to the well shaft and threw himself down it. Biggs continued to read.
The acid can be immediately washed off, but this produces a chemical reaction in any large body of water which causes the acid to turn into alcohol.
You check the high road and I'll take the low road and I'll I'll be in Scotland afore ye, sang Sid in a drunken drawl.
Great, quipped Arthur. A drunken dwarf, that's all we need.